Welcome to With Love Men, a podcast where we dig deep into what it truly means to be a man today. I'm Jake Fishbein.
And I'm Nick Papadopoulos, affectionately known as Coach Nick.
Together, we've led men's groups for a combined 25 years.
Wowza. And we've also written a novel about a fictional men's group and the impact of this work.
This podcast is another space in addition to our men's group, The Arena, where we have real conversations about vulnerability, courage, and connection. No masks, no pretending, just honest talk about being men.
So, everybody, join us, take a deep breath, step into or jump into the arena, and let's get started.
So today we're going to talk about what is this damn arena that we keep talking about. And we're going to start by reading a quote that some of you may be familiar with, especially if you've read Brene Brown's work. And it's a quote from a former president of ours, President Teddy Roosevelt. And it goes like this. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who, at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat.
Love it. Thank you for sharing that with our audience. And Jake, as we always do, so for our audience, when a guest attends one of our arena men's group sessions, we always have one of the men in the group read what Jake just read. And then we proceed by asking, so Jake, all that said, what does that mean to you? Or in a sentence or two, what do you take from that? Or what are you sitting with as you actually read that to us?
You know, every time I read this, it still strikes a chord, and we've been reading it for 5 years. And for me, I always think about a part in our novel, The Men's Group, where we don't use the arena metaphor exactly, but we're both big baseball fans. I root for
Right,
the right team, and Nick roots for the evil empire.
right.
The right
Who's in first
teams,
place? Who's
yeah,
currently in first
the right
place
the
right
right
now?
team, the Red Sox suck. So I don't know what they're doing right these days, but we use the metaphor of baseball of being up at bat and not up
Right,
in the nosebleeds. And I think that for me, that's what it means to be in the arena is am I, are you, are we at the metaphorical plate in our lives with the bat in our hands
right,
swinging
right.
versus being up in the peanut gallery throwing peanuts down in the field? Or I remember the first Major League Baseball game I ever went to was at Fenway Park. I had to have been about 10 or 11. And I love the Red Sox.
The Yankees were beating the Red Sox, right?
The Red Sox were playing the Baltimore Orioles. We were sitting down the third base line, those best seats right near the dugout.
Right,
And every time this guy Tony Batista got in the on deck circle, these two drunk assholes, like
right.
sitting near us, they'd yell at one would say, "Hey Tony," and the other would say like Batista, and they'd be like, "You suck." And that went on the whole game. Every time Batista got up to the on the on deck circle, "Hey Tony, Batista, you suck." That is the definition of being in the peanut gallery.
Yes, yes.
Tony was up there swinging the bat. He was
Right,
playing the game, and these two bozos were just heckling him. They
right,
weren't
right,
playing.
right,
And part of sports is obviously cheering, it is heckling. That's part of the game when we're attending.
right,
But in our lives, am I being the heckler? Am I judging? Am I calling out other people that are doing things I'm not doing? Or
right,
am I in the batter's box? Am I in the on deck circle? Am I on the field actually
right,
participating and playing, regardless of whether I strike out or whether
right,
I hit a home run or a base hit? And
right.
I'll say one final thing. I always remember when I played Little League, and I was bad at Little League. I was two in
As
my
bad as
head.
Tony Batista.
I mean, worse because he at least made it to the majors.
That's true, right?
I was so in my head that it was really hard to be present. And everyone said, keep your eye on the ball. And I'm up there thinking about the ball instead of keeping my
Hmm.
eye on the ball. My dad always used to tell me, he said, don't strike out looking.
Mm,
Like if you're gonna strike out, at least strike out by swinging the bat.
yeah,
And I still remember that to this day. And I think that's how I want to go through my life is if I'm gonna strike out, at least let me fail while daring greatly
right,
by taking a big cut, even if I hit air, at
right.
least I swung.
Yeah,
And so for me, that's what being in
that's
the arena
beautiful.
means.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. What about for you, Nick?
What does the arena mean to me? I would say it's where I'm alive. It's where I have the experience of being in control and or having influence. And it's where my vitality, my energy, my resilience is at its peak. It's at its highest. I believe when we're in the arena, right, or at the batter's box, we have the opportunity, like you said, regardless if we make contact with the ball or we swing and miss, we have an opportunity to actually impact the game to the point where we could win the metaphorical game or lose the metaphorical game. Versus when I'm in the stands, I really fall victim. I fall victim. Uh, I disconnect. I judge. I check out, I make excuses, I rationalize. Um, you and I have talked about the impact of the arena when you're in the arena. I really do believe that it has an impact on us physically. I do believe people who are in the arena consistently occur or look, I should say, as younger, because of they're vibrant. I think emotionally they occur as younger because of their level of energy and enthusiasm to whatever or whomever they're approaching. And I do believe mentally, intellectually, we are, when we're in the arena, we are um, curious. Um, if I had to sum it all up, I would say the arena is really an opportunity to learn and experience. And when we do
Mm.
that, we're alive. And I believe that's the essence of being human is to be alive while we're here, like fully alive.
Yeah, and that always has struck me when we've done our work, especially with men, about how important that aliveness is. And when I look at our world, and I read a really powerful book that many people have called The Myth of Normal by Gabor Mate
Hmm.
last year. And he writes about how sick our world is and
Mm,
how addicted our world is and how numbed out we are. And
right,
it's almost like we're not chasing aliveness. We're chasing how do we numb out from feeling alive? Alive doesn't always feel good,
right,
but it is
right,
always being alive.
right. Exactly. I mean, there's no, like you said, there's no guarantee when you're in the arena of what is going to happen, what the outcome is going to be. What I can guarantee is that you will feel and experience it all and everything that comes with it. And that's worth everything, I believe.
Absolutely agreed. And that leaves me to a question for you to put you on the hot seat,
Hmm.
which is when you were growing up or in your formative years, when you were a younger man. I know you're only 28, so it's still pretty early in your
just turned,
life.
just
Just
turned
turned
20.
20. I'm turning 34 tomorrow, so somehow I've
Yeah.
caught up. I've surpassed.
Somehow, right. Somehow you're past me since
Right,
we met.
right. In the 10 years we've known each other, I've aged almost 10 years, and
Right.
Nick's aged 4. So there we go. Um, who modeled for you what it means to be in the arena when you were growing
Mm.
up or in your formative years?
I mean, I have to say my parents, both my parents are immigrants. My dad came here, classic immigrant story, $50 in his pocket. My mom came here. as a refugee, and both of them did not know the language. They knew very few people. There was very little, infrastructure and support set up for them. And for them, they hopped in the arena way before they got here. My dad used to watch as a kid, as a younger person, the James Cagney gangster movies in New York City, and he really was inspired to be in New York. He loved everything New York. He loved everything America, and he decided, regardless, you know, I would say what he modeled was, when you have a commitment to someone or something, when you truly believe that future state is my destination, right? Or that thing or that project or the novel that you mentioned that we've written called The Men's Group. When we really believe in something, all the logistics and all that other stuff, becomes, it goes into the background. I mean, my
Mhm.
dad came here with $50 and did not know anybody, didn't have a place to stay, didn't have a job. And so I I grew up watching two people who were badass, regardless of, again, knowing very little of the culture, the language, the connections. They made a commitment to make it work here in a new frontier, and to make sure that their kids also excelled and their kids were taken care of, and that their kids had a different opportunity than they had. And so I got to give my two parents a lot of props. And I admire them because, often when you think of the arena, you think of gladiators and horses and people in armor and, Ben-Hur or whatever. My parents are, at best, my dad was 5'6", my mom at best is 5 feet. They're little people, you know. That's why I'm such a little person too, physically, height wise. And yet, even though they were little people, they were giants. I mean, and I would say that my parents, what they modeled most was their ways of being. They trusted themselves. They believed in their commitment. They persevered. They were badass.
Mhm.
They were gonna make it work. There was really no choice. Like, we're making this work. So yeah, I would say that's an easy answer for me growing up.
Yeah, and as you say, they persevered, they trusted themselves, they were badass, they believed. Those are such ways of being that you tend to bring to the world that
Yeah.
always show up. I think when I think of you, those
Oh,
are
thank you.
words that I would absolutely attach to how you show up and
Thank you.
everything you've experienced in the 10 years I've known you,
Yeah, thank you. Including going backwards in age.
including
Um,
going backwards in age. That takes
yeah.
true belief and perseverance.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I know, I appreciate that. So, let me ask you now, put you on the hot seat.
Yeah.
Uh, well, why do people choose? So far, I mean, I think we're building a case of why the arena may work, right?
Hmm.
Why, you know, you reference Brene Brown, Teddy Roosevelt talks about it. I'm sharing about my parents, right? You're sharing about your dad's, great piece of advice. So why do people choose to go in the stands? Why do people choose to remove themselves from the arena?
A number of reasons, and I'm not going to say a number because I know I'll say more than whatever the number I'm going to say is. The very first thing I thought of is because it is way easier to be yelling at Tony Batista while drinking a few beers and hot dogs than it is to be at the plate.
Yeah.
It's easy to be in the stands. It is not easy to be in the arena. That I always say, and I learned this from a great coach named Sean Galanos, that the buy-in for love is heartbreak. And he said that about romantic relationships because he's a relationship coach. And I see that that's everything. That
Hmm.
you step up to the batter's box, you have to be willing to fail.
Right.
You have to be willing to be heartbroken. You have to be
Right.
willing to feel that pain,
Right.
not lose and then numb it, but like
Right.
really feel it. And that's hard.
Right.
It is hard. And I mean, I've practiced being in the arena for many years now, and there are plenty of times when I've taken myself out of the arena because
Right.
it's too hard to feel all the time.
Right.
And so I think that's number one is it's easier to be in the peanut gallery, judging
Right.
and yelling than it is to actually be doing it. Because in the peanut gallery, you can make up, I could do that. Like,
Right.
he should have swung at that pitch, or the manager should have made that move, or what are the
Right.
politicians thinking?
Right.
Without actually being there and knowing the reality of being on the field. And I know we're talking about baseball a lot, but recently, because my beloved Red Sox are so terrible again, and they shouldn't be, but they are. The other day, they brought in a pitcher and he blew the lead.
Right.
And the next day, I read an article about how people were sending him and his wife death threats, how they were
Mm.
telling him he should commit suicide. And
Yikes.
it's like, I remember there was a guy in the Red Sox, I won't say his name. This was many years ago, not that it matters, but like we really wanted to take him into a back alley and do bad things.
Right.
Like,
Right.
but I never would have said that to him. He was
Right.
he was amazing. Like he was doing something I could not even fathom.
Right.
And yet our culture has become so okay with,
Mm.
I'm going to tweet about this pitcher and tell him that I want him to die
Right.
over a stupid ball game.
Right.
It's easy to be in the stands. You don't, this is the second point. When you're in the stands, you don't have to be responsible for anything.
Right.
You don't have to source the hot dogs. You don't have to, do anything. You just get to be there.
Right.
And then when you don't succeed, when your team loses, when the politicians make a decision you don't like, when a natural disaster happens, when people in your neighborhood do something that you disagree with, and you haven't been at the forefront, or I haven't been at the forefront, I get to complain about it. I get to make everybody wrong. I get to feel righteous. So when I'm in the
Right.
stands, I get to be right without having to
Yes.
do anything about it.
Yes.
And and then there's the third piece, and this third piece is slightly different, is my experience working with hundreds of people and being in men's groups for almost 10 years and leading them for 5 and doing trainings and working with clients and executives is people want to be miserable.
Mm. Well,
And
that's interesting.
yeah, they may not say they want to be miserable, but people choose misery
Right.
so much of the time. And misery is being up in the stands because you don't have any agency. But people want that because it's easy, because you don't have to be responsible, because it
Right.
means you don't have to like changing is not possible.
Right.
And also I think there are adaptive protective mechanisms that all come from our developmental, acute, and generational trauma that makes
Right.
being miserable appealing because it keeps us safe. But it's
Mm.
not safe up in the stands because you're not playing the game.
Right. Let me, gosh, so many goodies there. I'm going to go with my original question, which is you said at the very, very beginning, this last part, you said it's easier to be in the stands than to be up at the batter's box. And I want to challenge you on that. Is it really easier? Or is it easier short term, yet long term it's not, right? Or, you said it's easier and you feel more pain when you're in the arena. Again, the challenge is it easier and are you actually feeling less pain if you're in the stands?
No, it just feels easier. It it in the moment it requires less effort. It
Right,
feels like you're less vulnerable when
right,
you're in the stands. But
right,
in the long run, being in the stands makes you sick. Being in
right,
the stands means you have a lot of negative self-talk. All those people who are screaming at this Boston Red Sox pitcher to kill himself and that he should
right,
die, I would almost guarantee that their self-talk is like that to themselves.
right,
And
right,
so being in the stands is not easier. It just occurs that way because it can be when you've lived your whole life in the stands, getting up to the plate feels impossible. And then you make up these stories that I'm gonna suck. I
Right,
can't, being up in the stands is oftentimes I can't do it.
right,
Masked with I could do it better.
right. What I'm hearing you say is that when you're in the arena, you have the experience of being responsible. And when you're in the stands, you have the experience of being victim to your circumstances.
Hmm.
And in both instances, there's a choice that we can make. And in both instances, you're going to generate a certain result and a certain experience by choosing to either be responsible in the arena or choosing to be a victim of your circumstances in the stands.
Exactly.
Okay.
So I've got another question for you,
Okay.
which is what does it look like to be in the arena in a relationship, be it a romantic one or a familial one or even a professional relationship?
You know, we often relate to the arena, and I referenced this a little bit earlier, you know, the gladiator, the horses being in action, right? Running, whatever, fighting, wrestling, doing, especially for men. The arena is often associated with the doing, right? I'm doing a certain task, or I'm spending a certain number of hours working, right? Or I'm tackling something. I would say what it looks like is really ways of being, which then generates your actions, right? The actions are associated with your ways of being. And so when you're in a relationship, being in the arena can look like being intimate, being honest, being vulnerable, being messy, being fun, being adventurous. And I would say all of that said, right, the net equals being present and
Mm,
being really present to what you're experiencing, being present to what the other person is experiencing. In the business world, we may call that a high level of emotional intelligence or a high level of EQ. That's fine. And it's really about being present to what's wanted and needed in that moment when you're interacting with your client, with your
mm,
direct report, your peer, your partner, your intimate partner, your kids, like you said, your neighbor, your best friend or friend. Being really, really present. Being present can be challenging when you're triggered. Being present can be challenging when there's uh, there's some unsaid in the background that hasn't been cleaned up for days, weeks, in many cases years, right? Being present can be challenging when you're being distracted by the ball game, right? Or by social media, right? I mean, I think about the times where I've gone out to dinner, right? And I have the phone out on the dinner
mm.
table, right? And I'll look, or I'll hear the buzz, and so to me, being in the arena in any relationship is being present so that I can be with you in a way where the other person, you in this case, right, the two of us are talking right now, have the experience that I'm there, that you matter, this dynamic or this
Uh,
interaction matters, that we can create something together, even if it's a good laugh, even if it's a good story that we can tell later on.
mm. What strategies or tips would you have for the men or even women out there listening to this who are like, I makes sense, Coach Nick, like I got you. How the F do I be present?
Well, it part of being present is being intentional, right? Being proactive. So if you and I are going to dinner, it's being proactive and intentional about uh, keeping the phone away, right? Keeping the phone in my pocket. Being intentional, proactive, going to dinner or going to a meeting with you is understanding what might trigger me, right? What might you push back, or what might you say that could reel me in, right? Um, the folks who have the highest emotional intelligence or highest EQ are folks who ground themselves before an interaction. That interaction, by the way, could be a phone call, it could be an email exchange. It's certainly, some kind of a live conversation or in person. So I would say it's about preparation. It's not pretending. I did a talk, I guess it's a year now, to this HR association, and the talk was, what are you pretending not to notice? What are you pretending not to notice in your relationships? And because we tend to step over, step around, rationalize, make excuses, which are all experiences and forms of being in the stands rather than in the arena. So I to sum up the question, or the answer is to prepare in advance.
Mm.
To prepare what, what, again, what's your intention for the interaction, right? What's your goal? To prepare for the curveballs, to prepare for if there's any triggers that are there, and not to step around them, rather than, again, either, tackling them and being upfront, or at least finding a way to compartmentalize it and prepare what your response is going to be, right? Because it's going to happen. We are humans who do human things, and one of them is that we get triggered. Both, we get excited, we get mad. So pretending like it's not going to happen seems irresponsible to yourself and even to the other person.
And what occurs to me as you're speaking is being present means allowing that trigger to actually happen
Yeah.
versus squashing it. And we always often talk about that it's about noticing the trigger, the reaction, and how do you not stay there for so long. But
Right.
it's not about not reacting. That
Right.
that's not human, and our reactions can oftentimes teach us so much about our past experiences, about who we are, about what we value. And what I'm hearing in what you're saying is to be prepared, to
Right.
set an intention, to know what the minefield might be, and then also to not be ginger or step gingerly around the eggshells, but
Right.
to be willing to react and then clean it up in the
Right.
process.
Part of being present as well, which again to me is being in the arena, is also setting yourself and the other person and/or the dynamic to set yourselves up for success, right? I mean, and that's part of the preparation or the intentionality. If I don't have the time, then don't start something if you don't have the time,
Mm.
right? If you're not prepared to have a certain type of conversation or interaction, then don't have it. Postpone it for 24 hours, right? When I'm doing leadership training, and we talk about handling challenging conversations, one of the healthiest, effective strategies, if you and/or the other person seem seem triggered or don't seem grounded, is to take a pause and take a time out, right?
Mm.
And just go. That's being present to the moment to say this isn't the right time to have a conversation, right? Now
Yes.
it's different. Now it's different if you postpone it for 24 months or 24
Right.
days. Then you're going into the stands, which is very very different. Then.
Yeah. There's one thing I've been thinking of as you've been talking, and it's a meta arena metaphor kind of. There was this TV show in the early 2010s called Spartacus Blood and Sand, which I loved. A friend of mine, he's actually in our men's group. We discovered it
Okay.
spring break 2010, and it was gratuitous, like CGI blood, naked people everywhere. It was
Right.
bad television, but it was also like riveting. And anyway, it was all about gladiators. So literally the arena.
Sure.
And the second series was called like Sand of the Arena or whatever. I can't remember. Gods of the Arena.
Mhm.
In the first season, the guy who played Spartacus, this actor named Andy Whitfield, who was great, he got diagnosed with cancer right
Right.
after the first season. And they delayed it. They were hoping he could come back, and he got better, and then he got worse and he passed away.
Okay.
And when he was sick, he made a documentary. And I haven't seen the documentary, but he went on this journey of healing, and it was called like Be Here Now.
Okay.
And I thought of that as you were speaking about being present,
Mm.
and then connected with the Spartacus and the gods of the arena and the blood in Spartacus, blood and sand, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and just this reminder to be here now.
Right.
And we often talk about tomorrow is not promised to any of us, and it can become a cliche and it can be oversaid, and yet it's also very true.
Right.
And it is almost that challenge of being in the arena is about being here now. It's about
Absolutely.
being here now with anything you're feeling, being here now if you want to numb out, being here now if you're just excited and ecstatic, being here now if you're like, I don't know what to say and I feel really awkward. That
Right.
so often we as humans try to rush through the unpleasant experiences and the triggers, the reactions. And one opportunity I hear, and I'm taking away from our conversation, is to just be here now. And that is the ultimate way of being in the arena.
Absolutely. And as you were just sharing this last part, we also find ways to numb out, right? And especially in men's work, I've often come across men who will use porn or will use alcohol, and they'll admit that I need these vices, if you will, right? I need these other things to have me be more intimate or to
Mhm.
open up, right? Or to be honest. And how powerful would it be, right? And it's really a question for everybody. How powerful would it be to be present to how uncomfortable you really are about being honest and open and intimate in that moment with that
Yes.
person or in that group, right? I mean, what could be possible? And that's feeling alive, like allowing oh my gosh, I want to like scream or I want to bash my head against the wall instead of numbing out, right? Watching,
Yes.
hours upon hours of baseball or whatever, or drinking, yourself to sleep or whatever the case may be. So let me ask you, where in your life right now would you say you are in the arena and where are you in the stands? And what's the experience you're having in each?
Well, I'll try to answer
Easy question.
quickly.
Easy question.
Easy question as we come to the end of
I
our
know.
allotted time. I'll bottom line and I'll nail it. I'm absolutely in the arena around my relationship and my business.
Okay.
And the relationship just I feel super present. And
Intimate relationship.
my intimate relationship with my girlfriend who I live with. And I feel super present. Doesn't mean it's always easy. It doesn't mean I don't have strange thoughts sometimes that just pop up, but I'm super present
That's for
to
part two.
this for part two. I'm super present to just enjoying so much what Perry and I are creating together. Perry is my girlfriend, and it's just wonderful, and I feel very alive inside of it.
Right.
And then with my business, I'm trying things and I'm getting out of my own way.
Right.
And I've been in the arena. I've been building my coaching business, which includes the arena men's group for going on 8 years. And
Right.
so far this year, I just signed a new client. As soon as they pay, I will have made more money this year than I did all of last year. And it's only been five
Bravo.
months. And
Bravo.
that's like the indication for me. I am in the arena. Now, where I'm out of it,
Hmm.
I am not exercising.
Yep.
I joined a gym when I got to this office. There's a gym literally next door.
Right.
I went, I don't know, 3 or 4 times. And
Right.
eventually I just canceled it because I was like, I'm not going to go.
Right.
And I walk to work. I eat healthy. I'm committed to my health, but I am not in the arena when it comes to getting strong. I'm not in the
Got it.
arena and case in point, I reached out to someone in our group, the arena, a friend I went to college with who's gotten really into fitness. And I
Right.
texted him last Friday. I was on my way to California. I said, Carlo, I want your support in me exercising. I'll text you next week.
And
Have
you
I
have
texted
not.
him? It's on my
Oh,
thing of
I hope Carlo's listening
I
right
better
now.
at the top of my most important things to accomplish today. It says text Carlo. So I've got to do that before the end of the day, but it's so clear how stoppable I am
Yeah.
when it comes to that.
Yeah. Got it. I appreciate your honesty. And will you commit to reaching out to Carlo in some manner after this podcast?
100%. I
All
will reach
right.
out to him before I go home. I will text him.
Okay. Awesome. Which, by the way, for those who are listening, what I just did was a buy when, how much interaction, which took a few seconds. Even that is being in the arena, right? By actually holding someone and or yourself accountable, right? The accountability piece is being in the arena. Again, there's no guarantee. You may not call, but right now you're present to, this is where I'm off in the stands and this is what I need to do different, right? And so even the interaction of thinking and speaking and doing the buy when, how much is an important piece of being in the arena.
Absolutely. Well, with our final minutes before we have to go, what what's your like parting shots for everybody listening to this podcast on what it means to be in the arena and getting into the arena in their lives?
I would say, please, 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 if you are committed to living a long and healthy and prosperous life that you can role model for your kids, for the people at your work that report to you, the people around you, absolutely commit to a life of learning, a life of curiosity, a life of exploration. And I believe the arena, once we choose to be in the arena, it is really fascinating the number of people who will come out and support you. And I believe that when you're truly in the arena and truly immersed, you gain a whole lot of fans and a whole lot of supporters and a whole lot of advocates, which totally disrupts the narrative that most men have, which is I'm going to go at it alone and I'm going to go out west like Lewis and Clark and conquer the world, but it's all going to be by myself. I believe that when you go into the arena, people want you to win. People want some of that, especially those who are wanting someone to go first. Go first for your people. Go first. Go be the arena that you want to see in the
Mm.
world. Go be that person so people get the experience and the power of what happens when a human in their circle chooses to be in the arena.
Beautiful. And mine would be very simple. If you're gonna strike out swinging. Swing the damn bat.
Swing. Swing batter, swing.
Swing batter. Be willing. I remember when I tried out for Little League for the majors. Oh, it was bad. I remember my best friend's dad in the stands yelling, "Good cut." And I
Mm.
felt so much shame because I was missing the pitches. And I think
Hmm.
back at that now, and I think that was a good thing. Like, take a good cut.
And it was a good thing that you were going for the majors
It was.
because there's
That
so
was
much you can learn about yourself. I mean, that's part of the arena. Is that again, it goes back to learning. You get to learn about what's your skill set. Is this really what I want to be doing?
exactly. And it was being in the arena.
That's awesome.
Thank you all for listening.
Thank
With,
you.
with love, men.